This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. I've got a new product here that I'm going to learn and test. It's called the Needle Beetle. It's from Kris Krafter. KrisKrafter.com is where you can get one of these, KrisKrafter.com. And it's a little red slider that you push across, and it selects needles for your LK150, LK140, LK100. This is for plastic bed studio machines only. It doesn't work on metal bed machines. Now it comes with the little slider and also some detailed instructions, and it's called the Needle Beetle. So what does the Needle Beetle do? The Needle Beetle is placed on the right-hand side of some needles in work, and you're going to slide it from right to left. It only slides from right to left. What you're going to do is have whatever needles that you want to pattern on in B position. Now right now I have no yarn in the machine, and you pick out the first 8 of them, so that would be these 4 and these 4, and you decide what pattern you want. Now suppose I wanted to have 2 and then 2 back and then 2 forward and then 2 back, so that's 2, 4, 6, 8. What it will do is it'll copy these first 8 needles all the way across the needles I've chosen, just like that. It also kicks them all the way out into fully extended position if you put them in C position when you were picking out the first few needles. Now this is really handy and quick and accurate. I've been really pleased with the product. It seems like quite a quality product to me. There are so many things that we can't get anymore for our machines, and here's an item that is just really nice to have for your LK150, 140, 100. Now here's a sample of some things I did with this little goodie while I was learning to use it. Now I'm going to thread up and show you the device for tuck stitch and slip stitch. Now since this takes patterns that are 8 stitches wide, you need to plan some patterns that are 8 stitches wide. I'll start with this simple little tuck. In fact, we often call it card 3 tuck. It's a bit of slang based on one of the cards that was common in the punch card machines. Anyway, here is all there is to it. I'm going to get a great looking tuck stitch, and I'm only going to have to do something on rows 1 and row 5. Now here are a few tips for using this unit. If you're working from a chart and you number the rows along one side, that'll help you keep track of where you are. Go ahead and put the row counter on 0, 0, 0. That'll just come in handy. The Needle Beetle won't trip the row counter. This is tuck stitch. You don't want to tuck an end needle. You are going to have to deal with the end needles each row. So after you pick out your stitches, you need to push the end needles back so that they knit. Now the easiest way to put the Needle Beetle on the bed is to take this little lip right here and put it right in front of this ridge, and then just set it down. The tail goes to the right, and there's a little arrow right there. So that arrow points to the left. It only goes to the left. Now I'm going to pick out the stitches for this, and you might think, oh, you're going to be counting all the time, but it's not so bad. It's the end stitch, and then skip 3, and it's the next one. Now you don't bring them all the way out. In fact, the Needle Beetle ignores needles that are all the way out. You bring them to this C position, which is kind of a midway position. And when you go across, it's going to pick out every 4th needle following this pattern. In other words, it copies those 8 needles all the way across. And now I have picked that out. I need to set my carriage for a tuck stitch. For a tuck stitch on the LK150, all I have to do is push these 2 side levers back They're Russell levers, and these extended needles will not knit. Instead, it will lay the yarn on them. However, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to tuck an end needle. I need to push the end needles halfway back. We don't want to tuck in needles. And now I can knit 3 rows. On the 4th row, I want to knit all the needles. So I'll pop the leading side lever, this Russell lever, up to 2, and it will knit all the needles coming back. And as soon as I do that, so I don't forget, I will move it back to the hold or the tuck position. Now I've done 4 rows and I want to do row 5. Row 5 is a little different. What I need to do for 5 is bring out the 3rd, skip 3, and then 1. So it's going to be this one, just to C position, skip 3, and then this one. And I'll get out of the way, put the Needle Beetle on, and go across. So it copied those. Now, before I can do any tucks, I make sure that I'm not going to tuck an end needle, and I'm not going to. Now, I follow that same pattern. I'm going to knit 3 rows. And then I'm going to cancel the Russell lever right here, knit 1 row, and that puts everything in position for me to do my next row. As I look at my row counter, it now says 8. I'm going to run it down to 0, just to help myself keep track. And what I'm going to do is do the row 1 setup again. So the far right needle, and then the one that is after I skip 3. So it's going to be this one, and skip 3. And I come on with my Needle Beetle and do this setup. Before I can go ahead and knit, I need to push the end needles back. Now you might notice that it is helpful to hold the knitting back as you go across with the Needle Beetle, and also a little extra weight has proved helpful, just to kind of hold the knitting down. After all, we're doing tuck stitch. Now, not wanting to tuck my end needles, I'm pushing them back to C position, or we often call it upper working position. I'll do my 3 rows of tuck. And come back. Doing a plain knit by changing that lever and changing it back. And now I'm getting my tuck stitch. I'm going to do a little more and come back on camera and show you. Now, after a while, you just get a routine going. You don't have to consult your chart or anything else. I will warn you that the one thing I have the most trouble remembering is not to tuck on the end needles. I always have to, on row 1, remember to push them back. In fact, I have found it helpful to write right on the chart. Now we've done some tuck stitch. I'll knit a few rows plain, and we'll do some slip stitch with the Needle Beetle. So I got a little more complicated on my chart this time. I have 8 rows and 8 stitches wide, and I'm going to do a slip stitch. So I'm going to let my row counter help me. I'm going to put it on 0, 0, 0, and start working out my rows. Now here's something to keep in mind. It's the selected needles, that is the dark squares. Those are the ones that are going to knit. These other needles are going to slip. Here I am on the far right side. I consult my chart, 2 selected, skip 1 and 2, and that's all there is to the first row. So I do that, just bringing them as far as C position. Then I run the Needle Beetle. I'm holding the yarn back against the bed, and now I've selected accurately the needles all the way across the work, and I'm going to slip. Now I have to set the carriage for slip, and for slip what you do is you set these forward levers both on both sides. You set them forward so that they will push these back and knit them, but you set these back ones forward as well. Now when I go from right to left it is going to slip these needles that are in the back. It knits the ones in the front though, and that is exactly what it did. So that's good. But what's different about this from the last one that I did is that I have to use the Needle Beetle every row to get the pattern. So row 2 is 1, skip 1, 2, skip 3, 1. So 1, then skip 1 and do 2, skip 3 and do 1. That's my pattern, and one of the reasons I went with this is every single row is different. So you can see how the Needle Beetle facilitates doing something where every single row is different. Now I had to put the beetle on the right hand side of the bed again and go across, and I'm holding my yarn back against and setting the beetle out of the way. Now what I've got is I've got to have the end needle set to knit. Now this one on the right is sticking out, and it's this one, it's set to knit. However, the one on the far left isn't. So I'm going to bring it out. I want the end needles to always knit. So I want to automatically, that is, automatically like my hands, select end needles. And I knit from left to right. I'll push my carriage on out of the way so I can set the Needle Beetle for row 3. Row 3 of the pattern is skip 1 and pick out 2. Then skip 3 and pick out 2. And with my beetle and holding my work against the machine, it selects all of those accurately. And I knit from right to left. You don't have to change any settings. Now I'm going to knit from right to left, but only after bringing out the end needles on each end, because I don't want to slip end needles. Okay, my next row is going to be from left to right, but the Needle Beetle only works right to left, so we put it over here so we can do our selection again. My next row is row 4. Row 4 is pick 2, 3 back, pick 2. So 2, 3, 2, just like that. Easy. I'll hold my work back against the machine and go across and move the beetle out of the way again. And here I come knitting that row. Now I don't want to slip an end needle. There's one. So there I go. If I forget once in a while, I know it's not the end of the world, but I like to be fairly accurate. Now for row 5, I am going to have 1, skip 3, 2, skip 1, 1. 1, skip 3, 2, skip 1, 1. That's my layout for row 5. And I put the beetle on. I can do it by feel. I just feel that I've got that front tab down. And I'm going to run across, see what my needle arrangement is, and make sure the end needles are selected, because it is the needles that are out that knit. And knit my row. Brings me to row 6. Row 6. 3 back, 2 up, 1 back, and 2 up. And here's the beetle, ready to do his job. So I'll beetle my way on across, knit row 6. The beetle tends to end up in my lap. Row 7 is 2 back, 2 up, 1 back, 2 up. So 2 back, 1 up, 1 back, 2 up. Oops. 2 back, 2 up, 1 back, 2 up. See, I only have to count 8. That is so much easier for me than having to count all the way across the bed. And that would be row 7. Oops, I need this end needle selected. There we go. Row 8. Skip 1, bring out 2, skip 1, bring out 2. And I'm just checking, I want my end needle selected. Now I'm going to do one more repeat off camera so that you can get a good view of how the pattern stitch looks. So So here's the very attractive slip stitch that I did that was so quick and simple using the Needle Beetle. Now here's my sample, that slip stitch and the tuck stitch, and if you flip over the tuck stitch, it's got this wonderful texture, almost a blackberry. The slip stitch has a lot less texture.